how have you seen the adoption of having to use new technology? How do you talk to organizations and get them to see the benefits and have them translate this to their users? Because dropping an app on a phone that's already in your pocket is quite straightforward. But I guess when you have to explain the benefits of wearing of wearable devices or lanyards or bracelets or whatever it may be, how do, because I can see the benefits quite clearly, but what do you do? How do you explain this to companies, and how, I think more importantly, how do you get the companies to translate this to their employees, who will effectively be the end users, to help them understand the importance of these wearables?
Yeah, a lot of threads, and I realize I haven't really answered most of your question previously, Danny. So thanks for bringing it up again. Is the hygiene aspect, right? We do definitely see this globally, of not only organizations but individuals being more aware of the cleanliness of their environment and how that impacts their productivity on a moment by moment basis, where people might go normally weeks without thinking too much about, geez, is my office clean or not? And, only the biggest offenses would be kind of noticed by the general populace. Oh, I saw a rat in my office building, or, something like that. These periodic things that pull us out of our daily business and, make us cognizant of what's going on with the space around us. But pandemic has changed that, right? People are thinking constantly about the space and how they interact with it. And at the end of the day, what is the space around me doing to me, my family, and friends? Right? Like all of a sudden it's very present, which of course is a massive distraction and a big impact to people's productivity in a very real way. So I think both the employees, the customers, the people who use the space for commerce, very aware, and people who are benefiting from the commerce, but the employers or retailers or governments are very aware of the potential drop for sure of productivity because of that, that freezing of, geez, I'm worried now about just doing what I normally do. So hygiene is really important. There's two things I want to kind of answer to you, but let me start with the most simple one around hygiene, because even before the pandemic, one of our key use cases, one of several, but maybe the most clear to portray to people is things like bathroom cleanliness. Maybe most people don't really think about it. I'll use an office space as an example because I think it's easy for most people to wrap their heads around, but it's no different in factories and hospitals and airports as well. But most people don't necessarily think too much about the bathroom that I use at work. How does it get cleaned? Why, when, and what drives the frequency? The typical model is that a tenant will write into their lease some minimum SLA with their landlord about how their spaces that they're using, common spaces typically, are going to be cleaned. And usually there's very little margin left in that contract. So their goal is to get that highest SLA for the littlest amount of rent impact, which really has been, just an accelerating trend, just putting a lot of pressure on building owners as a cost item, where they've got, tenants that complain, they've got SLAs in their contracts, but they're also not paid very well to actually provide that service, which really puts a pinch there, increasingly being asked to do more with less. And so the general is that you'll hire some fixed number, the minimum fixed number of cleaning staff that you need. And that cleaning staff will take a very simplistic approach to cleaning. Usually they'll start at the top or they'll start at the bottom, and they'll just work their way in a circle up and around the building. And what that means is that they will, clean the first floor at, say, 8 a.m. and they'll go up the building, and they might work their way back down and clean the first floor again at 5 p.m., which means, between 8 and 5, nobody's looking at any problems that happen in there. One of the things we see in the data, and it probably makes sense to people, the ground floors of buildings are used like 10 to 100 times more than all of the bathrooms in the rest of the building. Right? So this like cycle up and cycle down is almost guaranteed to give some people some gross experiences, because the highest trafficked areas are going to have these big gaps in service. So this, just, they call them routes, right? Just what's my circuit? What's my route? It keeps it fairly simple and optimized, but it's a pretty bad way to satisfy the needs of people who are worried about cleanliness. Pre-pandemic, all right, I ran out of paper towels. Maybe there's a water leak. A toilet has gotten clogged up. I know more about toilets than I ever did. Never ever thought I'd know. But, toilets gotten clogged up. All right, well, maybe I'll go to a different bathroom, or I'll just defer till I get home, or, whatever your I can't say that word, operationalizing of that problem as an individual. But now you throw pandemic on top of that. All right. So a lot of cleaning typically has also been done off hours, right? Particularly for, non-bathroom space, interior to the office. Well, now pandemic, and you throw in, all right, now we've got to sanitize the places that people are being present, things that people are using on a continual basis. By the way, I'm not really going to pay you any more money, but I'm going to now put this much more demanding set of circumstances on top of your cleaning staff. By the way, they still have to keep the bathrooms clean. And I'm really talking now about places where people don't really have the choice to work from home. We're talking about factories and hospitals and government installations. And we do a lot of work in those areas.
We're talking now about places of work where, well, essentially where people, they as you say, they can't work from the comfort of their home. They don't have that security, and people are having to take work wherever they can. I mean, there are huge problems there. So we're talking about people going to work almost fearful. I've witnessed it myself, and they have no choice. It's either they don't have any other choice. They're going to work fearing, what am I touching? Who am I interacting with? Who's been here before me? It's
absolutely.
I completely get it. Yeah,
absolutely. And when we first saw the pandemic, of course, everybody wants to respond and help out. And we saw some very heroic cleaning teams who showed up in the backdrop of that, because they didn't have a choice either. Generally not the highest paid staff. You think about about a hospital, for instance. There's a lot of fairly well-paid people, even in the context of NHS, I think. But the cleaning staff are maybe even more important in some cases during the quarantine, because minimizing spread is really important. And so early on, we saw cleaning staff who normally cleans at night showing up during the day, working extra time. And you quickly kind of reach the point where if I'm doing it the old way, I'm going to burn out. Because not only am I still having to clean the way I used to clean, but now I have to clean on this on-demand right then and there. How could you possibly keep up? These buildings were already operating very thinly in terms of, labor for, staff to perform that labor. Even worse. And now we're a year in, just many cleaning staffs just imploded because of this, just burnt out. And people like, yes, I worry for my health. I'm trying to do the right thing and do this job. Now it's a 16-hour-a-day job. This is not going to last very long. And we see people really struggling with that. And the answer to it really in our model is to say that you can't do these, predefined routes anymore. What you've really got to move to is a predictive and a just-in-time model. And, it really amounts to something quite simple, which is don't clean the places nobody has been. Spend your time cleaning the places people are, what they're using, where they're present. And that is both from a historical perspective. Like I said, we see data very clearly. The bathrooms on the floor that touches the ground get a lot of traffic, particularly in public buildings, like a hospital or an airport or, a shopping center. Ground floor, much more heavily tracked. So that's something that you can pretty much depend on. But then you end up with situational usages, right? Maybe you've got a conference on the 5th floor where a company has called people together, and for some reason they don't normally do this, but they've got this immediate use of this set of facilities that they normally don't. So you can't predict it. You have to react to it at the time. So you need to combine that sort of reactive cleaning to stop cleaning the place that doesn't need to be cleaned because nobody's there. Now there's a sort of emergency cleaning that needs to go on, and maybe a periodic cleaning. Like, oh, I'm seeing a spike in usage. I should be in there sanitizing every 15 minutes because there's people continuously using it, rather than handle it 3 hours from now. Mm-hmm. And you put all of this data together. Generally when we talk about a bathroom, well, what do we measure? So usually it's motion, it's presence, door open and close. We can measure things like toilet flushes and soap dispensers being used, but usually just presence, door open and close, or a motion detector at the entrance, and user feedback is what we find usually matters most for most facilities. And so you put a couple of different sensors in those places and then begin to correlate traffic to user feedback, and you can start getting a picture of your operation, how you need to optimize, which floors need a lot of soap, which floors have a lot of plumbing problems. What would you do with that information? Well, if you've got a toilet that clogs up pretty routinely, there's probably something wrong with the plumbing. You should probably pay one of the maintenance staff to go, figure out that and solve it once and for all. Without the data, those things tend to get lost in the mix, right? A cleaning person might discover it, will clear the toilet, use the plunger, but the next person along with a bad piece of plumbing will clog it up right again. So, the end user experience is it's never usable, right? So we can provide this data where users are saying, hey, toilet clog, toilet clog, toilet clog. Cleaning staff can say, clear the toilet, and then 5 minutes later, people are saying toilet clog, toilet clog. You can start to see these patterns. And the place where the patterns are most important are in bigger real estate holdings, right? Things that a human building manager can pretty easily manage a 25 floor apartment or office building. These are pretty clever guys. They figure it out. They're expert at what they do. But then when you scale that to, all right, 2 25 floor buildings, 5 25 floor buildings, 10, now we're well beyond the human's ability to kind of keep track of all that. You can't manage by walking around anymore. So we see the data as being really critical to help people, I think of it as seeing in the dark, right? It's just like, I can't do it with my own 2 eyes anymore. I have to measure remotely. I have to, bring these insights in that are going to supplement what I can see with my human eyes. And that's ultimately what the IoT piece is all about.